We're now going to begin our closing session, and it is my pleasure to turn the program over to Sharon Lopez. Ms. Lopez is the managing partner of Triquetra Law, a civil rights, employment law, and appellate advocacy focused firm. She served as the 123rd president of the PBA, the first Latina, the second minority, the first mother, the first ex-legal services attorney to serve in this role. Ms. Lopez's PBA work focuses on diversity and inclusion, and she believes that universal approaches to membership development will advance opportunities for women and minorities in the legal profession. And just as a personal aside, for those that don't know, she is my law partner and boss and BFF. And thank you for your support of this program. I'm going to turn it over to you, Attorney Lopez, and we're so excited that we have our two heavy hitters there, with you a heavy hitter as well.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I am so excited to be a part of this Diversity Summit. You have totally kicked this out of the park, and I'm terrible at sports metaphors, but I can tell you that this is a winning summit, absolutely. I am thrilled to be closing this summit, formal part of it, by having our guest today. For the last several months, I've had the pleasure of working with Chief Judge Juan Sanchez in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and David Schwager, the 126th president of the Pennsylvania Bar Association, to put this closing discussion together. I was inspired and energized to see and hear two enthusiastic legal leaders work on issues of diversity and inclusion that are not only timely and relevant, but practical to all of us in the profession. Before we get started, I want to take a few minutes to introduce you to these gentlemen lawyers with me today and explain the format. The format is stylized as an interview by President Schwager of Chief Sanchez. We have about 40 minutes and 5 or 6 questions, so you know that it's more of a conversation than a formal interview. We thought this format was necessary because the chief has taken diversity and inclusion on as a priority for his time on the bench as the chief. President Schwager shares his commitment to diversity, so it seemed like a natural way to end our summit by hearing our two lawyer leaders and judicial leaders share the practical tasks that we can take on to promote diversity and inclusion. First, let me introduce you to them. President Schwager is a true lawyer leader. He served on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court Disciplinary Board beginning in 2012 and was appointed chair of the D Board in 2017. Prior to serving as the PBA presidential officer, he served as the PBA treasurer and the chair of the Real Property and Probate and Trust section. He also has the distinction of serving on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals Bankruptcy Judge Merit Selection Committee. That is a big honor. Judge Sanchez, Chief Judge Sanchez, I like calling him Chief. He was appointed to the position of Chief Judge of the Eastern District in August 1st, 2018. He has served as a federal judge for the last 15 years and follows the Honorable Lawrence F. Stengel as the 15th judge of this district. He is the first Hispanic to lead the court in its 229-year history. Oh, just a little hand twinkles there. We got to do twinkles. He received his BA cum laude from the City College of University of New York and his JD from University of Pennsylvania's Law School. I guess he's not a slacker. Where he also received the Benjamin R. Jones Award for his commitment to humanity and law. He definitely has a commitment to humanity and law. I can say this because he started his law career as a legal aid in public defender's office in Chester County. He not only left home in New York, but he came to Chester County to do the hard work of representing the poor, indigent, and criminal defendants in that county. Following a career in public interest as a public interest lawyer, Chief Judge then was elected to the Chester County Court of Common Pleas in 1997. He served as judge there until President George W. Bush nominated him to the seat on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Judge Sanchez was inducted onto the federal bench in July 9th, 2004. A great, great history, and we're so glad you're here, Chief.
Thank you.
There are various resources in your materials that the Chief and President will be discussing. but I encourage you to listen to this dynamic and insightful interview during the next 40 minutes. President Schwager, please feel free to start your interview with the chief. Enjoy, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm grateful that Sharon held a few Chief Judge Sanchez and me, because when I was told that I was interviewing the judge, I mistakenly thought the topic was diversity jurisdiction in the Eastern District. So thankfully, Sharon and Judge Sanchez set me straight right away. Well, Chief, let's just dive right into it. I see from the material you submitted that you have a comprehensive plan for diversity and inclusion for the district court for the Eastern District. What motivated you to focus on diversity and inclusion for the district?
So first of all, I'm delighted to be here to talk to you about diversity and inclusiveness, such an important topic. And as you might suspect, this has been a topic close to my heart. I've been involved since I was in law school because I was part of the admissions committee that will make recommendations for law students of diverse backgrounds to be admitted to university. And over the last 40 years, I have been talking and hearing talk about the issue and the importance of diversity and inclusiveness in our legal profession and in the judiciary. But the more things change, from my perspective, the more they stay the same. We still have the same circumstances where women and minorities are underrepresented in the legal profession, and particularly underrepresented in the federal judiciary. And the numbers are staggering when you consider that 40% of the population is of minority background, but only 17% of the seats on the federal district courts are federal judges of minority background, and 21% in the Court of Appeals. And for women, it's similarly, although they comprise 0.5% of the population, only 20% of the district court judges in the federal judiciary and 26% in the Court of Appeals. So when you take a look at the judiciary itself is not very diverse. And yet, one of the motivating factors for me when I became a chief to make this a priority is the fact that I have seen very little change, and when I'm committed to making change, but the fact that it is also part of the strategic plan of the federal judiciary, because we recognize that diversity and inclusiveness is important to equality and equal treatment under the law. And it's important so that people of different backgrounds are represented in the federal judiciary and get a fair shake. That our decisions are better because people have the opportunity to participate, and that the public who see people from a cross-section of the committee has confidence in the decisions that federal judges make, because as you well, federal judges have extraordinary power over people's freedom, liberty, and property. All judges do. So that has been the motivating factor. I became chief 2 years ago. I have a little more time to go, and I want to see some measurable change in the federal judiciary.
Chief, you talked about the strategic plan for the entire federal judiciary. I'm wondering whether two of the key players in that process would clearly be members of the United States Senate and the administration. To what extent is there any discussion? Has there been any discussion with any of those folks about this ultimate goal? Because obviously the occupant of the White House changes, periodically. Senators change periodically. But in terms of any of the institutional discussions, has any of that taken place to your knowledge?
From my standpoint, I have not been participating in those discussions. But I think that usually the legislative and the executive branch are aware of the importance of diversity within the federal judiciary.
Great, thank you. Can you tell us a bit more about the details of what your diversity and inclusion plan involves?
Right. So beginning a couple of years ago, I began to focus on the issue of diversity. And it came about because I was interested in finding out whether we could improve the participation of jurors in our jury pools, diversify the participation of jurors. While we meet all the constitutional standards, of course, I felt that we could do a little bit better. And I discovered that that we needed to increase the participation of African Americans in the jury pools. So on the basis of certain discussions that we had and certain recommendations, we began to adopt a couple of recommendations to our jury plan, one in particular to allow us to reach more people, especially people that were returning or were not responding to the jury questionnaire. It is a little complicated, but we are a two-step process. We first qualify the jury, and then we pull from the qualified wheel. So we were discovering that the questionnaires were not being returned in the minority community, primarily African-American communities. So consequently, we had a sort of a disparity. And we focused on changing that by adopting an amendment to the plan, which meant that when a questionnaire is returned, we could send a duplicate questionnaire, another questionnaire from a person in the same district. We could send another questionnaire. We maintain the proportionality and the randomness, but we may reach more people. And that little amendment, amendment to the plan seems to have some effect. The other thing we have done, and we put it on pause, is to do an educational program to reach the community, to emphasize the importance of participation, the importance of being in the box, the importance of taking a role and participating in our democracy directly, but the importance of being in the box so that you can make a difference. Because we discover, and there are studies that indicate that one person of color in the jury box or in the jury panel can have an impact on the verdicts. This document, the studies. So that's only as to the plan, as to the diversity of the jury pool, which is what focused me on the issue of doing something and looking at the federal judiciary. But the problem is bigger than that. We have lawyers that are appointed to represent criminal defendants that cannot represent themselves at a rate, an attorney fee rate, reduced rate, but it's a pretty fairly decent rate nowadays because we have the statutory maximum of 150 hours, $50 per hour for representing a person who cannot represent themselves. And we discover that the pool of court-appointed lawyers in our district, but also nationally, is aging. And we also discovered that it's not only aging, we discovered that the vast majority of the lawyers on the panels are non-minorities who are over 55 years of age, and that minorities, and Latinos, African Americans, and Asians, and other minorities, and other groups from other communities that identifiable as lawyers in the community are lacking. Basically, of a pool of 150 lawyers, we only had something like 22 female lawyers, only about 5 or 6 Latino lawyers, less than 10 African Americans. I think we only have 1 Asian American on the panel. And we have begun to focus on improving the gender and racial diversity of those panel attorneys so that we could have more lawyers of diverse background representing people that look like them.
Chief, if I could interrupt for just a second. Yes. I can just interrupt for a second for benefit of our participants. If someone wanted to get into that pool, how would they do that?
So usually the lawyers, and if there are any minority lawyers who want to be considered for the panel, they have to meet a certain criteria. Experience is one of the criteria. Some federal litigation, trial experience, because they're going to be handling serious criminal cases. We have a committee of lawyers that is well represented and includes minorities and includes the federal defender, list keeper. They vet the candidates and then they make recommendations to the criminal business committee of the court, the Criminal Business Rule Committee vets those candidates, and then the court appoints them to represent, to be on the panel. So it's not a complicated process, but there is an application, and the applicants get vetted. And you have to have the experience.
And the application would be available on the court's website?
The application is available on the court website.
Great.
And so we are providing mentoring to lawyers who may not have federal experience, but have state experience in criminal cases, so that we could help them transition and understand the basis. And once they get that experience, perhaps they could get on the panel. So we're developing a mentoring program primarily focusing on increasing the diversity and the gender diversity and the racial diversity of the panels. And we are also, if we have candidates who fit the bill, but don't have the necessary federal experience, we may accept them, subject to them being mentored by a lawyer on the panel to make the transition from state to federal experience. So that's a big component part of the efforts that we have been engaging in our district to increase the diversity and to be more inclusive, because I think that's really important to the justice system, to have lawyers who not only look like the people who they represent, but also understand, because some of us share the same background and the same culture and the same experience. The other component part is, as I said before, the federal judiciary is not necessarily up to par in terms of the representation of diverse group of women and minorities. So we encourage that to be a consideration. We also, for example, magistrate judges are appointed by the judges of our court, and they are vetted by what we call merit selection panels. One of the things that we have been committed as a court is to make sure that the people who are doing the vetting of the candidates that apply for magistrate judge, who will be submitted to the judges for final approval, are that the panel itself is diverse. I've had the opportunity with my court to work on appointing 3 panels now, one for the reappointment of Judge Wells that happened while I was a chief. The second one for the reappointment of Judges Rice and Judges Strawbridge, that's on the way. And the next one is for the appointment of a vacancy to replace Judge Ruder, who retired on September 1st of this year. And all 3 panels, and I've been extraordinarily impressed and grateful to my colleagues, because all 3 panels, my colleagues allow me the opportunity to select people of high merit and ability who are from very diverse backgrounds. I think the Sharon is on one of the committees, Lopez, and I think that the comments I've received is that it's the most diverse panel, merit selection panel ever appointed in our court. It is truly diverse in terms of gender. I think we have more females than males, and it's truly diverse in terms of the lawyers in the community. So we have that commitment, and I think if you let that committee do its will, it will submit 5 candidates to the Board of Judges that we can all be proud of, that represent a cross-section of the community. Law clerks, the law clerks pool is not very diverse, but we are encouraging through efforts with the American Bar Association, efforts with the local affinity groups in the law schools, students of diverse background to consider applying for this job. Often, a lot of my colleagues say, the applicant pool is not there. So we have been reaching out and encouraging people. And we've had programs at the federal courthouse last year where we invited judges and students, third-year students contemplating a career and contemplating to apply for these positions, to come and ask questions and talk to us. And it was a very successful program. It was, believe it or not, organized by Ashley Chan. She's the bankruptcy judge, and it was organized through her efforts with the outreach committee of our court. So in all those aspects, we are working to actually doing something that will be meaningful. And my hope is that at the end of my term, that we could have some measurable results, that when I look back, the panel could be more diverse, that we could bring on more people of color to the judiciary, or at least to the magistrate judge position, that our juries are more diverse, and that it will be something that I'm looking forward. If that doesn't happen, at least I try. I'll be very unhappy about it and sad, because I'm determined. Because I think after 40 years, we need some change. We need some results. I'm a little bit tired of talking about these issues. I want tangible results.
Sure. Chief, does your plan address diversity and inclusion for other court employees as well?
For everything, down the top. It's always a consideration for everything. For the workforce, diversity in the workforce is really important, because they're bringing people of different backgrounds to a workplace to share ideas, to learn from each other, makes our decisions much better and more complete. We're not perfect human beings. We have a lot of blinders. I have a lot of blinders. That's why I like diversity of law clerks. I have the privilege of having 3 law clerks, and I always try to have diversity within my law clerks to help me to make better decisions, to be giving me the confidence that I have been objective, that I have been fair, and that my decisions are the correct decisions as I see them.
Thanks. Chief, since today's Pennsylvania Bar Association Diversity Summit is also being sponsored by a local county bar, the Montgomery Bar Association, what can state and county bars do to promote your diversity and inclusion projects?
Many bars, I've been very pleased that some bar associations are doing this. And I'll give you an example. For the last 5 years, every summer, I go to Chester County to talk to students who have been recruited by the law firms, are working in law firms in Chester County, are people of diverse backgrounds. And the Bar Association co-sponsors that and creates opportunities for them to meet the judges in the state system, to meet the judges from the federal court that are from Chester County. And so Judge Joyner and myself go every year, and we join Judge Ott from the Superior Court and some of the local judges to talk to them about our path, how we got to become judges, and hopefully encourage them down the line to consider these positions, because we need them in both the state and the federal judiciary, but also to help them with their career, become better lawyers, and create opportunities for them. So affinity groups, could be a tremendous resource. And I know that in Chester County, the Bar Association reaches out a lot to the local law schools and has programs, and we invite them to participate in our programs as well. I think local bar associations could partner with the law firms, and it doesn't have to be many. You start it with one, and slowly but surely, other law firms will join and create these opportunities for women and people of color and other minorities. I think that those are things that we can do, and we have a very robust outreach program in our court. It used to be headed by Judge Cynthia Roof. She's been busy with the federal judicial agency representing judges, so she stepped down, and now is being run by Judge Kearney from Montgomery County, as you all know, has extraordinary good relationships with the bar in Montgomery County. And we put programs together with Montgomery County. We are always willing to work with students and to work with associates and come down and speak to them and partner with the Bar Association as well as the law firms through the bars. I think more of that is really important. That's for law firms and the bar associations. But let me share with you a little example. When I first landed in Chester County with 2 kids, my wife, 2 kids, and I had $100 when I landed in a very strange county to work in legal services. And shortly after I started, a lawyer who was a member of the Bar Association who spoke Spanish took it upon himself to learn Spanish. It I think is of Irish descent, took it upon himself to introduce himself to me, to invite me to a cup of coffee, and to slowly build a relationship with me, to mentor me. And I really appreciated that. And along the way, I learned, that you need multiple mentors. I needed thousands of mentors as I was going through some of these processes. But you learn, and you feel comfortable, you feel welcome. The Bar Association was very welcoming to me as well. And those are the little things that you could do when you identify people and you bring them on board. Through the program that the Bar Association has had, I know that I've taught some kids in the law schools, and I know some of them have been hired locally. So we're opening doors for people to build careers in strange places where, like Chester County, minority population is like less than 3%. But I built my career there with a family, and many other people like me have followed. And that's something that we could do. And things will naturally lead you there. I stayed. I didn't go back to New York, thank God, because I landed as a chief judge of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Chief. Of course, Judge Kearney, who you mentioned, is also a past president of the Pennsylvania Bar Institute, as I'm sure you know. But apropos of what you were saying about Chester County, I live in practice in the Middle District of Pennsylvania, and that comprises a lot of rural counties. And many of those counties have little or no minority attorney representation. And often we hear from lawyers in those counties that they can't work on diversity and inclusion efforts because there are no minority attorneys in their county. How do you propose leadership should respond to the lack of diverse and minority attorneys in some of these more rural counties of the Commonwealth?
What is it? If you create opportunities, we will come. If you create opportunities, we will come. When I was looking for opportunities, there was a lot of doors shut to me back in the 80s. And we had been facing a tough economy. One of the things that I was very lucky was that I had a fellowship there was a fellowship, the Reggie Fellowship. And that's how I landed in Chester County, right? An opportunity was there. I was determined enough that I was going to have a legal job because I had a family to support. And lo and behold, I was a little familiar with Chester County because I had done work there with the Farm Workers Project. In fact, I helped set up the Farm Workers Project back in the day with Art Reed, who's a lawyer in Philadelphia doing civil rights, Juan Gonzalez, who was a community organizer, through Legal Services up in Girard. We had a little office there, and we got that program off the ground. I was a law student behind that effort, and I had to work with them, and we hired the first lawyer, Tom Cook, who later, I don't want to get sidetracked, but that's how I landed there. I was the first Hispanic in the bar to be admitted. Shortly after me, some follow, and there are more now practicing. So if you create opportunities, we will come. And we have to create opportunities. You are from the Middle District. You have a robust federal defender office. And in the federal system, my friend, Linda Freeland, is an African-American woman who runs that office. Mm-hmm. She has people of diverse backgrounds. Talk to people like that, and they will give you ideas because they are constantly thinking about recruiting people of diverse backgrounds to go to the cities. And, Kate Bartman, our clerk of court, is from the Middle District. She's from Allegheny County. She was an assistant public defender back in the day. So I guess I don't want to sound like a broken record. You create opportunities, you advertise in the right places, and you get out the word that Latinos are welcome, or you advertise in their papers and all that, we will come.
Sure. And tell me, Judge, because the challenge of putting diverse members of the bench has been something of a challenge. What advice can you give some of our young, diverse attendees? What advice can you give them on how they can best position themselves to one day ascend to the federal bench?
Well,
what should they do?
So I I'm going to tell you what I did, my pathway to the bench, and I'm pretty sure it's not unique, but I'm going to give it to you. My plan was to become a really good lawyer. I was so foolish to think that to be a trial judge, you had to know the rules of evidence and you had to be a good trial lawyer. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes if you know the senator, you might get there, but that's what I thought. So I concentrated in the beginning of my career. That's how I landed in the public defenders, because I wanted to learn how to try cases in the courtroom. And I did that for 14 years. I was every day in the courtroom. So you got to take care of that, because nobody's going to give you an opportunity unless you show that you have merit and ability and you cover the bases. That's one. The other one is, again, the bar associations have a lot to do and say whether you have the qualifications, the demeanor, the talent to be considered qualified for seeking the position. So being active in bar association is always a good thing. I took care of that as well because I was a bar member in Chester County for a long time. I have been active in bar association functions as a lawyer and as a judge in state and federal court. The third component part was that I had to get known in the community. So I used my baseball talent to coach kids. You can't go wrong with using your talents and ability to give to the community. And I coached Little League baseball and then Babe Ruth baseball. And I coached my kids through college, or just before they went to college, but I stayed coaching and I stayed involved and became known in the community through those nonprofits and serving on nonprofit organizations like the United Way, like the Chester County Housing Authority. I was on the board. And also, you have to, if you are going to become a judge, depending on whether you're solely seeking to be a federal judge or state judge, cover the political base because if it's a state judge you want to be in Pennsylvania, that's political. You have to learn how to run a campaign at least. So I became active in the political party. I'm a person of modest means. I don't have a lot of money. So I had to work really hard. I had to do all the tough grunt work that people do when they deliver, ballots to your door and walking the neighborhood and talking to people and all that. But I got known in the community. I was a committee man. I was not a donor. Some people are donors because they have a lot of money, but I was not a donor. I didn't have the money. I had a young family, but nobody could outwork me. So I felt that, that's how I'm going to do it the hard way. And then slowly but surely, I when a position was being considered, people came to me and suggested that might be a good idea for me to run. Of course, I didn't let them on that I wanted to run.
Chief, what can individual lawyers do to promote diversity and inclusion?
Like I said, go to the law schools. Almost every law school in your community, and we have a lot of law schools in our different counties. Chester County has Villanova, very close by. Widener University or law school is very close by. In the city, you have tons of law schools. I think we have in Harrisburg. I mean, we have law schools in a lot of places. Go and speak. They always welcome the lawyers to speak when career day comes. Law schools are always invited. Go to your law school. We all went to law school, right? I don't think we used to have a lawyer in Chester County long time ago that I just took the bar exam. He was permitted to practice with it, and then he had a preceptor. I don't know if that's still doable, but most of us went to law school. Get active in your law school and talk to kids and mentor them.
Thank you. Now you had your diversity and inclusion plan that you've laid out for us is most ambitious. Have you seen evidence of or received any feedback that indicates that the policies and procedures that you're implementing are actually making a difference?
So pre-COVID, we had many reports from judges who had been complaining. And you could speak to Judge Kearney also, because Judge Kearney, when he first came, that's one of the things he noticed. And we started doing something about it. So pre-COVID, after we made the minor reforms of changes, uh, we had a lot of judges coming up to me and coming up to Judge Schmel, who's the chair of the jury committee, telling me anecdotally that there have been differences in the participation of people of color on the juries. I could tell you that I tried 2 cases in which over 50% were people of color in a couple of civil cases. Out of 8 jurors, over 4 were people of color. That's a little bit unusual, to have. So anecdotally, my colleagues have talked to me and have said, we begin to see some change. Now, is it because we're a little bit more sensitive to the fact that we are talking about it and trying to do something about it? Or is it because the numbers are really changing? Well, we put on hold the fact that we were going to go back and take a look at the numbers, at the data, to see if the data confirms our observations. It may be true, it may not be true. So that remains to be seen. Because of COVID, we've put that project on hold. Our model, the program that we did, is similar to the Michigan model, because Michigan has a similar court with similar counties. I think they have about 8 counties and 2 big cities in their district. Unfortunately, they did the same thing, and they had different issues, but they did the same thing. And unfortunately, the chief judge there reported to me that the numbers improved slightly, not much, in the diversity of the pools. And we've also talked to a chief judge in, I think is in the Western District of New York, who said that was similar experience that they had. They worked really hard. They had an educational program, all the bells and whistles, and the program, there was slight improvement, not significant. My view is that any improvement is good, number one. And number two, I know that our community our problem was a little bit different. And I'm hopeful that since our approach was a little bit more targeted and it was not as complicated, that might make a big difference. But at the end of the day, it may be that we will be back where we started. But I think that most of us felt that we had to do something, and something is better than nothing. At minimum, we've elevated the sensitivity of all our judges to that issue.
Absolutely. You're doing a great job in that respect. Chief, this past summer, as you know, and we all know, Judge Esther Salas in the New Jersey District Court suffered the tragic murder of her son in her own home. And some of the news stories indicate the killer's motivation may have been a hatred of women. Some lawyers experience sexist or racist comments while practicing law. What steps can local bar associations take to address these type of hate messages?
The hate messages should never be tolerated, but I think that we all should be sensitive to these issues. And I know that there are educational programs that federal courts have been putting together, some of the federal courts across the United States. And I think bar associations need to put these programs and talk about these issues honestly and frankly in our programming and our CLEs, because I think these are important issues that impact the administration of justice and fairness and equality under the law for all of us. And we all, regardless of race, national origin, race, religion, sexual orientation, deserve the very best, or at least that we strive to do the very best to make sure that our decisions are objective, fair, consistent with the law, and without any bias or prejudice, directly or indirectly, whether we're aware or whether we're not aware. And so I think that, like I know that the Sixth Circuit has what they call a program that presents a 5-part learning series to promote these values and engage in honest dialogue about these issues in open and accepting way, about bias, implicit bias, whether it's race, sex, gender, and the like, issues that are really important. No human being is perfect. A lot of us have a lot of blinders, and any sensitivity that we could grow or learn and sensitivity that we could develop, I think is good for all of us.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question, but
No,
education,
no, yeah,
all about education, education, education.
there you go.
We people that come from the immigrant tradition know the value of an education.
Absolutely.
That is the way to overcome everything.
Sure. I'm a first generation American, Chief.
Yeah.
My mother came here with a 5th grade education. My father had to go to night school to get his high school diploma in Manhattan. So I certainly know what you mean when you talk about that. Tell me, Chief, your plan. How unique is it, or how many are you aware of your colleagues, your other chief judges around the federal judiciary who are following a similar track?
So it's not unique. It was not unique for us because I looked to other districts who had done similar things or had dealt with the issue before. One being the Western District of Buffalo, and they had done it. The chief judge there, who was a federal judge, was addressing the issue as a federal judge. But 10 years earlier, he had done it in state court because he was the president judge in state court as well. And Michigan had done it. Others, after I wrote there was an article that I wrote. My good friend Judge Rice wrote me into writing an article about the issue of diversity in the jury pools. And because he said, law review articles usually are not practical. We should do something that is practical and people could use. So after that article was published, I got calls from other federal courts in the federal judiciary from the South and from Missouri of people who are trying to do the same thing. So it's not unique. It's an issue that I think that, as I said, is part of the strategic plan. And our courts, as a chief judge, my vision is to promote that aspect of the strategic plan. And I talk about that in the Bar Association speeches that I've given. The other pillar is access to the court. That's why I talk about the panels and encouraging people to accept cases pro bono, to increase access to the courts, and encourage people, especially young associates, to work on these cases through the law firm so that they could develop the skills and they could be mentored, because all of us are sensitive to that. And if we know, we give them the opportunities to litigate in front of us. And technology, leveraging technology to help lawyers in the courtroom, which is part of that strategic plan. And the other fundamental is the educational component, because part of the strategic plan is to educate the members of our district population across of the community about the federal courts and what we do and the importance of participating and being engaged. So we are in pre-COVID, we were about to unroll a campaign to go out into the community to talk to people and educate people and engage people to learn about the system and the importance of jury participation. And what was unique about our program was that the program was not developed by judges. What is unique about our program is that we brought the community from the district population. We brought the community. We have members of the religious community, of the nonprofit community, of the legal community, of the schools in the northern part of the city, church groups. We brought the community and we let them speak. We tell them, this is the challenge. How can we reach your community? And so the ideas came from them of how to reach their community. What are the best ways of doing it? And I think that's the difference between our programs. So I'm excited that our approach has been a little different. It's not from top down, it's an approach from bottom up, developed by the people who we brought along to help us focus on the issue of how do we best increase the diversity of the jury pool and get people to send those questionnaires in so that we could increase the numbers in our pools.
Now, I want to complain. I was told we only have a minute, but we started 15 minutes late. Are you cutting us short, Sharon?
I don't think I'm cutting you short,
Okay, okay.
but go ahead and
Okay.
wrap up with one
Okay,
more question.
we'll try to wrap up. Chief,
I'm talking too much, right?
no,
You are not
well,
talking too much.
maybe just every other word, Chief.
All
Um,
right.
You've talked a bit about jury pools. Do the federal courts collect demographic information on jurors who are summoned versus those who are chosen to determine whether there's any sort of systemic, bias involved there that might be at work?
Uh, I will have to check. I will have to
Okay.
get back to you. I'm
No worries.
sorry. I don't know. I
No,
don't know the
that's okay. That was
information.
a
I don't want to give you
question
wrong
from one of the
information.
audience.
Yeah.
So speaking of systemic racism, many have questioned how to end it. What can the courts do to address systemic racism and to mitigate the harm that it promotes?
Like anything, as I said, some of our courts are looking for programs, educational programs. We have a federal justice center that puts on program, and we encourage our judges to participate in these programs. Whenever I see one, I try to attend. So it's again putting on more educational programs for all of us. In our jury trials, we in the instructions, we have an opportunity to tell people, their responsibility, to make sure that their decisions are based on the law and the facts, and not on any prejudice or biases that they may have against a particular group, gender, and all that. And we got to be a little careful with that, but at least we highlight those issues for the jurors. And I think the key to that is making sure that we have broad participation from people from a cross section of the community who are in our jury boxes and who are in the jury room deliberating, because I think that dynamic will check itself.
Sure. Recognizing that we all have biases, what strategies would you recommend to enable judges to self-assess their own bias?
So I could tell you what I do, especially in the area of criminal law, which is emotional, and people talk at your feelings and might touch on things that you might not even be aware of. I think when we talked earlier, I do two things. I always make sure that my judgments and my decisions are emotion free. So I pause and I take time. The more complex the case, the more time I take between the hearing and the sentencing, the day I'm going to impose sentence. So that's one thing. I try to make a mental check to see whether I'm treating people that are in front of me any different than anybody else. In the federal judiciary, we have at least one factor that we always have to consider, is that you have to make sure that people who are similarly situated are treated similarly. So I'm always reminded of that. And when I see issues that might raise some doubt as to that, and I think that we have to put doubt in everything we do and check ourselves, I have the benefit also that I can, and this is a wonderful thing for the federal judiciary. I don't know what happens in the state, although you have a sentencing commission, is they have data and statistics, and they have your own data and statistics that you could summon. And I've done it a few times just to get a feel of, this bothers me. I want to make sure that I'm not out of the reservation camp. Want to make sure that I'm being fair, and you take that into account. That's the other thing that you do. And the other thing is, when I see it, I question it and I call upon it. When I see a prosecutor and I see that, wait a minute, I had a person of color with the same charges, the same background, looking at more time than a different person the difference is the color of the skin, I raise questions. I don't have to take a guilty plea or that puts a different range and all of that. So I'm not afraid of doing that, to put others in check, or to make sure that others explain to me, because I have the authority. I don't have to accept something.
So I don't want Sharon to chastise me too much. So I promised you I wasn't going to ask you anything political. But tonight, of
Good.
course, is the vice presidential debate. And one of the candidates is diverse. And our country, of course, has had a Black president, Barack Obama. These and other things may cause some of us to think that we're past the time where diversity and inclusion efforts are needed, that the job is done. Is the job ever done, Chief?
So no, the job is never done. And even when you achieve a level of diversity, you have to be vigilant to make sure that you always work on it. You can't, in my view, you can't look. It's like the same when I was a lawyer. The defense never rests. I think that communities of color always have to be, and all of us, because it's not just community of colors. All lawyers have an obligation. We have to be on guard that we don't lose it, that we maintain diversity and inclusion. The fact that we have people like me reach high points in our career, and we had people of color reach the highest and most powerful office in the world, doesn't mean that the job is done. It means that we have to be vigilant, and we have to continue to keep these issues in front and center. Look at our history. I mean, you just look at our history. Look at housing and how people are living today in the communities they live in today. That tells you a lot about these issues.
Chief Judge Juan Sanchez of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, thank you so very much for your time, your insight, your passion, and all that you're doing for diversity and inclusion. Back over to you, Sharon.
Thank you so much, President Schwager. That was a very invigorating. Chief, I have one softball question, coordinator's privilege. So I have to ask you, since you are a father, you are a husband, you are a teacher, you are a grandfather, you are a judge, you are a lawyer, what are the tips you can offer to our participants to be better mentors and also to be better mentees? If you can give us a 30-second response, we sure would appreciate it.
So I think the one thing that I always felt that convinces people is to care, to show that you care, and reach out and show you care. I'm not a great teacher, but I'm a passionate teacher, and just because I'm passionate about the law and I'm passionate about what they do, it's a little contagious. And it gives me an opportunity to connect with people. Same passion that I had when I was a lawyer, under the Constitution, defending somebody who was accused of a trial. I love being in front of the jury. And I think if you show you care to people, I think that's the first thing. I think that would be a great thing for you to be a mentor, and people will gravitate and people will benefit from you. And to act on it, and you're going to have ups and downs because you may not have good students or good people but you got to persevere.
Absolutely.
It's more aspirational than I don't have any magic wand.
You are such you are such an inspiration to me, Judge. I could sit and listen to you for hours. I love this format, and I'm so glad the Diversity Summit let me do this. Have President Schwager interview you. Thank you for being so accessible to us. Please stick around for the next phase, which is sort of I guess we're calling it happy hour, but there's no alcohol required or being offered. So please stick around if you can. Thank you so much. Did you want to make any closing statement at all, Judge?
No, I think this is the first time that I was invited to participate in this summit. Sharon and President Schwager, I think it's been a tremendous honor for me to talk to you and to try to reach you. My door is always open. We are, feel free to contact me if you want to volunteer for any of these programs. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm only in my third year as a chief judge. I hope that I could stay long enough to make a difference. And I think that with your help and our commitment, that we are going to do something. I'm committed to doing something to have some tangible results, because I think for a long time we have paid lip service to many of these issues, and the results almost are like, I remember the 70s being just like today. We need to change that conversation, and we need to change that circumstance. And I'm committed to that, to do everything in my humble way of doing that work, that difficult work. And it is difficult, and it is challenging, but and I've been blessed that I have the opportunity to lead a wonderful group of judges who have the same sensitivity and are always willing to work to improve the quality of justice in our court. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. It's been wonderful. And I look to see some of you in my courtroom and to talk to you. And hopefully some of you will be considered for appointments to some of the merit selection panels. I have another one coming up. Judge Perkin is retiring in March of 2021 from Allentown. So I will be putting together another merit selection panel in March of 2020 for a position in March 2021. So I might be looking to some of you to help me participate in these panels. Sharon knows all about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chief. Andrea, I'm passing it back to you. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm sure we're all ready to sign up to do the work.
Oh, yes. I am so proud to be a federal practitioner right now and to be able to call you Chief. Thank you so much. And President Schwager, that was great. Way to hit it out of the park the last session. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. To our presenters and moderators, your time volunteered was significant, and you produced sessions that were really a gift to folks. We thank you. To our PBA staff and our PBI staff, you were patient as we planned. You know what it's like to work with lawyers. We can sometimes be difficult to herd around, but you stuck with us and you tried to do things that we asked you to do, and you've done it so well. We thank you. We hope you're glad that you decided to participate in today's summit. That definitely took an investment of time on your part, and that's duly noted. We've had some powerful discussions, and amazing lawyers and non-lawyers share themselves with us. Again, that was such a gift. Please do, before my last words, please do consider joining us for the virtual reception, which will follow this immediately. The Zoom chat is, or the Zoom link is in the chat box, so you should go there now and copy it out. Then let's see, the reception is co-sponsored by the PBA diversity team and the PBA Young Lawyers Division. We're very excited about that. I'm going to personally end the program by saying that I'm going to pledge to continue and sustain this work and be a supportive ally, accomplice, and to do my action plan, and you've heard it now. So thank you, everyone. We'll be joining the Zoom reception soon. Take care and be well.